in America called a system of justice. We have an educational system, a judicial system, a governmental system. How many people are aware that the word system is a Latin word, comes from a Latin word, and the Roman Empire for the sewer? The sewer in ancient Rome was merely referred to in Latin as the system. And so today, in America, we are proud to say that we have a system. And we do. It is a sewer. There's no doubt about that. I am saying that we need to make ourselves aware of words, terms, concepts, ideas, and begin to do something probably you haven't done before. Go back and start researching where words and ideas have come from. You will begin to appreciate that there's an awful lot of things that we take for granted, that we have no idea in the world where they came from, and that somewhere along the line, unless we are ready to acknowledge the fact that true spirituality is not based on Western man's religion, it is not based on Western cosmological concepts. True spirituality must be traced back to its source, and this is why the work of Lloyd Pye was so important to me, because I'm interested to know who designed us the way we are, who put into us the different factions within ourselves, who made us like we are, and how did we get here. That's why I appreciated so much of the different speakers bringing out the different points in relation to how we got here, where we're going, and what the pyramids and such things represent. There are so many different subjects that I like rambling on about. I don't think that a question and answer is appropriate because I really don't have many answers for anything. So I have all the questions. I don't have any of the answers. But at this point, I'm going to, how long did we, about 40 minutes? Okay. I think I will. What now? Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you're tried in a court in an Islamic land, you're under Islamic justice. If you're tried in the Middle Ages under Rome, you were under Vatican justice, church justice system. In America, we have something called a criminal justice system. The implications of the word is that the criminals are administrating the justice. So we have a criminal justice system. And if you think that is by chance humorous, understand that the powers that be do not choose words and terms lightly. These people know what they're doing. When they use terms and phrases and symbols, they know what they're saying. I, for one, take them at their word. If they have a symbol that's on a national coat of arms, if they have a word or a term, I mean, why, for instance, do the Roman priests wear black robes and judges wear black robes? Very interesting, black robes. Black was the color associated with the planet Saturn. Green was the color associated with the planet Venus. Red is the color, of course, associated with the planet Saturn. Black is the color. Red. That's what I'm sorry. That's what I meant. Even school children know that. Red. Right. Red is the color associated with Mars. But back to the robe. Why do the Catholic priests wear black robes? Why do you wear a black robe when you graduate from high school or college and university? And where does the word college comes from? It comes from the College of Cardinals. The whole concept of wearing a square black mortarboard goes back to Mecca. The square, the black square in Mecca, which is surrounded by the circle. It has to do with a very ancient symbolism. but how it has been used by the West and misrepresented by the West. If you think about the word court, going back to the judges who wear black robes in courts, the whole idea in a court is like tennis. The whole idea in a court is to put the ball back in the other guy's court, and you do that with a racket, because the whole thing is a racket. Yeah, and the very word, if you look up in a legal dictionary, look up the word attorn, A-T-T-U-R-N. An attorn was used in the Middle Ages for the person who would take property at the instigation of the king or the magistrate. He would take the property from one person and turn it over to another. He was called an attorn. And today, that's what attorneys do. They take property from one and give it to another. Cease it to be, I would say, suffice it to say, I have probably a list of people or institutions which I abhor. The top one is attorneys. I have no respect for attorneys. And the reason why is because they have misused their ability and they have misrepresented themselves around the world. They have misrepresented what they are actually representing. When you use the word law, what law? Again, you go back to terms and words, attorneys. There's a very big difference between an attorney or between the word legal and lawful. Things which are legal do not necessarily mean that they're lawful. Why do you have to have a license, for instance? You have to have a marriage license because the state is a part of your marriage and a marriage license. Now, if you find someone that you want to marry, that's wonderful. And if you want to get married before God, that's also wonderful. But you better get a license from the state first. And if the marriage doesn't work, you can go to God, but you're going to court first. Because the whole concept of marriage, the whole concept of contracts, the whole entire idea of business in the world is based on contracts, courts, lawyers. So that the entire world, in the Western world, is based on a contract. This is why there's a difference between being English and British. The word Brit comes from the Hebrew word barith. Barith in Hebrew means a contract or a covenant. And ish in Hebrew means man or men. It can be singular or plural. Therefore, barith-ish becomes British, the man of the covenant men. What are we talking about? We're talking about a new covenant. The new covenant is, of course, the New Testament of the Bible. The new covenant, or a new contract from God to man to rule the world or to rule the earth. Which brings me back to something I did want to finish and I didn't, and that was the whole concept of God's kingdom. In the year, and again I preface these comments by saying I am not the world's foremost authority, but I will provide you with the material if you're interested. In the year 1213, the Pope of Rome signed a concordant contract treaty with the King of England. In the year 1213, the Pope signed a treaty with the King of England, which said basically this, that since Jesus Christ is the Messiah who owns and all things were created by and through him, therefore all things which exist on the earth and in the universe are owned by the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Since that is the case, then the actual ownership of the earth and all life on it belongs to Jesus Christ. But since he is not here right now, someone needs to stand in for him. And the word in Latin is vicar, which basically means someone who stands in for. So the Pope appointed himself as vicar of Christ, who's standing in for Jesus. Jesus has the right to own the whole world, but since he's not here yet, he's busy right now elsewhere. Somebody has to be, the dirty job has to fall on someone. So the Pope decided that he will own the whole world. And you think that's funny? That's the law. That was an actual treaty drawn up in Rome with the King of England. Then the whole earth, with all of its life and possessions, being owned by the papacy for Jesus, being owned by the Pope, was then put into a trust, and the King of England was made the trustee in trust of the Trust for Christ. So that the King of England then becomes known as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Therefore, the papacy, as of even this very day, still maintains that the Pope owns the world, and that the King of England is King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and will remain so until Jesus comes back. And in point of fact, at the coronation of the King of England, the Archbishop of Canterbury said something to the effect, I don't have it in front of me, but something to the effect that the King of England is accepting the position as King of Kings and Lord of Lords for Jesus Christ, and until such time as Jesus Christ comes back to the earth, the King of England is the King of all kings and the Lord of all lords. A rather adventurous position to put yourself into. But this points up the point I wish to make, is that there is a fact of the matter that the church, in fact, is the basis for international maritime admiralty or corporate high seas law. The law of business, period. And the business of money floats all governments. This is why I would recommend and suggest, that governments and institutions under governments, educational institutions, banking institutions, are hesitant to have anything to do with the findings of Christopher or Stephen or any of the other speakers and any of the other many researchers around the world which are on the cutting edge of new technologies and new understandings and new sciences, and also takes in the UFO community. This, I believe, is the reason why governments and institutions of education have for many, many years looked the other way and will not accept the new paradigm. It's because behind international maritime admiralty, corporate business, money, law is the Vatican. And unless and until you understand the thoroughness of what I'm saying, you're never going to understand why governments and educational institutions continually will not and refuse to see the new evidences. It's because the church is at stake. And if the church is at stake, so is money, so is corporate law, so is the whole entire world system, which is based on corporate or canon law. What we have here are a few pioneers who are faced with trying to bring spiritual and intellectual knowledge of the past into a world that is dominated by powerful criminal syndicates. I had an FBI man about 7 years ago, and I was in Los Angeles. He was in another large city in the state of California. I was in Los Angeles, and I got a phone call one one day from a FBI man, unless we are ready to acknowledge the fact that true spirituality is not based on Western man's religion. It is not based on Western cosmological concepts. True spirituality must be traced back to its source, and this is why the work of us, and begin to do something probably you haven't done before. Go back and start researching where words and ideas have come from. You will begin to appreciate that there's an awful lot of things that we take for granted, that we have no idea in the world where they came from, and that somewhere along the line, referred to in Latin as the system. And so today, in America, we are proud to say that we have a system. And we do. It is a sewer. There's no doubt about that. I am saying that we need to make ourselves aware of words, terms, concepts, ideas in America called a system of justice. We have an educational system, a judicial system, a governmental system. How many people are aware that the word system is a Latin word, comes from a Latin word, and the Roman Empire for the sewer? The sewer in ancient Rome was merely why pi was so important to me, because I'm interested to know who designed us the way we are, who put into us the different factions within ourselves, who made us like we are, and how did we get here. That's why I appreciated so much of the different speakers bringing out the different